of our parenting seminar, 12 huge mistakes that parents can avoid. Much of what we're sharing, like I mentioned last night, is being gleaned from this text called 12 Huge Mistakes Parents Can Avoid by Tim Elmore. And so I encourage you guys to check out that title. If today is your first day with us, I just want to let you know my name is Rob Young. I'm here with my compadre.
This material together.
All right. So just a few housekeeping tips. If you're new to the building and you have a small child with you, we do have a nursery. Just see one of the supervisors about that. Also, there's bathrooms in the rear, and there's a handicap-accessible bathroom behind us through the doors to my right. If you feel like you need some coffee in your system, we have that too. And so I encourage you, feel free to get up and get coffee or snacks during the lesson. You will be able to hear us from behind the glass. I just ask that you keep your coffee and your snacks back there until you're done, okay?
So last night we did give out the overfunctioning parent quiz. We hope you did go through that. There was a joke last night. We are not collecting them and grading them. We're not giving A's and F's for your parenting. But if you did go through that, make sure you are looking at the higher scores. Those are the areas you really want to focus on as we go through this material. If you didn't get one, I'm not sure if you have more copies. And some new people tonight. Okay, so Rob has some.
You can see me if you didn't
afterwards. You can see Rob, and you get a copy of that. And really, the takeaway from last night, anything to take away from last night, you want to remember this slide right here. We are not raising kids. We are raising adults. Okay? We are not raising kids. We are raising adults. Let's remember that. That's the main emphasis from last night and throughout this next few days.
And so last night we covered 3 of the mistakes, the 3 first mistakes. Mistake number 1, we won't let them fail. We talked about how the society we currently live in, we put a lot of insulation around kids, and we try to keep them from that failure, but in the long run, that really hurts them. Mistake number 2, we project our lives on them. We project ourselves on them, right? You know, all of our dreams that were never accomplished, we try to get our kids to live those out for us, right? At a very young age, we buy them the stethoscope and we say, hey, we try to write that script for them, write the story for them that they're going to be a doctor. And then mistake number 3, we prioritize being happy as the number 1 goal for our kids, but happiness doesn't do much for us, as we're going to continue to talk about today.
All right, so you guys ready to dive into number 4? Number 4 is going to be a new one tonight. You ready? All right, okay, great. Just want to make sure we're all awake and ready to go.
They went to work today, so yes. They're a little,
Number 4 is we are inconsistent. So the first bullet here is that we lack a compass to make decisions, especially those who are outside of Christ. They have no compass, right? I gave a children's ministry lesson a couple of weeks ago that our compass is Christ. Without Christ as being your compass, you really have no direction in this life. We've grown accustomed to delegating to professionals, right? So we expect the school, we expect the youth minister to raise our children, and we expect all these different institutions to raise our children. We delegate out our responsibilities God has given to us. And I spoke to Rob about this. I just want to spend a little time here. Proverbs 22, verse 6, the NIV says, start children off in the way they should go, and even when they are old, they will not turn from it. The New King James Version, same verse, says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. This command is given to me and to my wife. It's given to you fathers and you mothers here. That command is given to you. It's not given to Rob to train your children or to me to train your children, not the schools, not the social workers, not the school counselors. It is given to the parents for us to train the children. And it can be very inconsistent in raising our children. So we're called to start training early and to start doing that as soon as possible. Coming to Bible class a half hour on Wednesday night and a half hour on Sunday and 4 days of VBS a year is not going to cut it. It needs to be daily, consistent training by you, mom and dad, not the church. You know, I tell the ladies in the church, the children's ministry, yes, while they're with us, let's encourage them, let's be excited, let's pump them up. But really, we give them material, and during the week, it's on you guys. We only have them for a half hour on Wednesday and Sunday, and then they are in the main assembly later on. But really, it's the parents need to force that consistency with our children. The next point is that we're busy. Right? We're too busy to do the daily quiet time with our children because we have work and we have other responsibilities, so we become inconsistent. But once again, we have to make that available. The history and research on being inconsistent Brain cells grow when they are stimulated. They are strengthened and expanded with consistent use. The more we practice something, the better our brain adapts to that function, and the conscious becomes a subconscious, right? That's how Jesus directed his teaching. He was always directing at the thoughts, not really the actions, but more the thoughts. And so with more consistent use, we'll be more consistent and will become part of us. And practice does not make perfect, it makes permanent, right? So that's the important part of being consistent. It will make something permanent in our lives with our children.
All right, some of the consequences. We're talking about when we are not consistent. I always want to say we're not consistent as opposed to we are inconsistent. Same thing if I say it differently. Parenting inconsistencies breed insecure and unstable children. We have to understand that children, young people, even probably ourselves, we like to know what we're dealing with. Right? Don't you want to come home and know what you're dealing with? You go to work, you want to know what you're dealing with. Kids are no different. They want to know what they're dealing with. So when they have inconsistencies, that throws them way off. They have no idea how to handle that situation. The safest thing for a child is to be consistent. I have here as a scripture reference Deuteronomy chapter 6. Many of us know it well. The Bible here kind of talks to us about how consistent we need to be. God actually says to his people, he says, talk to your children about the things of the Bible. He says, when you wake up, when you go to sleep, when you walk along the road, when you're sitting at the table. He goes on. He says, basically, everywhere you go, no matter what you're doing, be consistent in the things of God, right? That's what he wants us to do. I also here have reference 1 Corinthians 15:58, which says, your work is not in vain, because typically as a parent, we're repeating ourselves over and over and over again, and sometimes we get tired and we're like, hey, you know what, I want to give up, right? Or you know what, I'm tired of talking to my kid. But we can't do that. We really need to be consistent with them.
So solutions, the first bullet point there, clarity fosters focused direction. Clarity is one of the greatest gifts adults can give their children. And Rob did a great lesson yesterday, the main lesson, that bold vision. Keep that bold vision. I hope and pray that's the vision you have for your families. All 5 of my family members, all 4 of us, including myself, 5, crossing that finish line one day, crossing that line and being in heaven one day. So that is the bold vision we want to have as the leaders of our household, and the mothers too being on board with that, our wives also being on board. This is a very uncertain world we're living in. We must furnish clear values and a clear role model of what a healthy adult looks like. As we know, the world's getting more and more unstable. People who claim to be adults are not living like adults. So especially men and women of Christ, we need to really stick out. We need to be set apart. We need to be unique. We need to be setting that example, what a healthy male looks like, because obviously males don't look like males any longer, and what healthy females look like, because females aren't looking like females any longer. So we really need to set those roles, roles in place. Clarity forces clear direction, which in turn promotes ambition as opposed to ambiguity. So when we have a clear direction, things aren't as ambiguous any longer. Things are clear and concise for our children to see. We must at all costs avoid being fuzzy about morals or ethics. So remember, God's word is very, very clear, and there's certain things we need to be very, very clear with our children. There's no fuzziness. Usually we try to make God's word fuzzy, but we saw yesterday, God's word is not fuzzy. It's we who want to make it fuzzy. And we're communicating to our children, we want to be very clear on what's expected and what's not expected, and to hold them to that standard. I just talked about raising the bar yesterday, and it's okay if them falling below that bar. And remember, we are not raising kids. We can't emphasize enough. We're not raising kids. We are raising adults. The next point there, transparency fosters validation and vulnerability. Transparency is contagious. So we're doing family devos. That's once a week in our household. On Saturday night, we have Bible bagel Saturday morning. Saturday night is our family devo. It's a fun time. Be transparent. Be open. it's very contagious. I share that. Daddy used to be very messed up. I'm not going that much into detail yet because they're still at a younger age, but I share with them, Daddy used to be very messed up. Daddy used to do some very bad things. And they're like, you, Daddy? I'm like, yes, me, Daddy. And I even let them know, even sometimes in the church, as brothers, sometimes we butt heads. And I say, sometimes we butt heads, but we are able to work those things out. We're able to talk those things out. Once they see that we're human and that we've messed up, we followed up, and that lets them see, okay, I can understand. Daddy's relatable. Mommy's relatable. We do talk about that. Sometimes Daddy wants to yell and scream, but Daddy uses self-control. So we want to get to their side and really let them know that we want to be transparent and we want to be relatable with our children. If your child doesn't see that, they're not likely to disclose their own struggles. They don't feel it's a safe environment. If mommy and daddy aren't being real, they're not going to be real. And kids realize they are not alone. So when they realize that mommy and daddy, they do struggle, they do mess up, that they can be relatable, it lets them see that they can talk to us. And all this being consistent with the daily Bible times and the devos and all these different things, we're setting the groundwork at a young age. So when they transition into this age, the 12 and up group, the framework is there. The clear right and wrongs are there. The relationship, which we'll get into later, is there. It's all being set up at a young age. So when they transition over into the 12 and up age, they're able to know that mommy and daddy, they're there. They've messed up, they have sinned, they've done various things. So we want to keep that open with them.
And just to piggyback on what Gerard is saying, when your child is 0 to 12, they believe anything you say, right? Like if you tell them, the sun is really red, they'll buy that. But, by the time they're 12 or 13, they're starting to say, I don't think you know what you're talking about, right? And so that can happen when you're laying down the rules of the house, the fences in the house. If you're inconsistent, right, you're saying one thing but doing another, man, they're going to smell that out right away. And they're going to say something is wrong because you've told me to do this all my life, but you're doing something different, mom or dad. That's a very huge inconsistency. And so when you are very transparent about where you're falling short, you've already exposed yourself, right? There's nothing for them to uncover, to reveal. Like I already beat you there, and I told you about it already. The third one here is boundaries foster security. And so I kind of talked about it a little already, that boundaries are often perceived as negative, but they are precisely what young people need as they figure out who they are, right? Most people know, if you're in education, if you're a teacher, if you're a good teacher, you know that the best classrooms are going to have some very good structures in place. Kids are going to want to go to those classrooms. Believe it or not, the teacher that comes down the hardest, that has the most structure in the classroom, kids are like, I'm going there. Why? Because when they get there, they know exactly what they're going to get. As opposed to the teacher that's kind of loosey-goosey, now they're like, oh, I don't know, I get picked on in that class. Things happen when there's no structure. It's very important that as parents, we not only have structure or boundaries, but it's consistent. We can't have boundaries only when we're energetic, when our bellies are full, but when you're tired, you know those days when you come home and your kid is like, Daddy, can I? And what do you want to do? Go ahead, just leave me alone. What does that child learn? They're like, well, if I say this long enough, loud enough, and annoying enough, I will certainly get my way. But in the long run, what that child will also experience is probably some really bad hardships in their life because their parent didn't set the boundaries and stick to them and be consistent with them. Boundaries don't prevent growth and progress. They actually encourage them. When you have a very structured environment, it's easy to grow, right? It's easy to grow. It's when things are not structured that they get out of whack. Boundaries help the natural exploration from becoming destructive, right? So, if I set the parameters, like I'll just use my kids as an example, like, hey, my backyard is their realm of exploration, and I make sure it's secure, then when they go out there, I don't need to watch. I don't need to be on top of them. right? Because I've already secured that space to make sure that, hey, you can go dig in the dirt, you can play with the worms, you can do whatever you want to do. It's fine. I've already checked it out. And I don't have to hover over you, right? Hopefully you guys don't do this, right? Hopefully you're not those parents that are like, put the dirt down, it's dirty. Like, don't touch that. Like, I believe God made dirt, and dirt don't hurt, right? So, we need to let the kids explore. As long as you've created the boundary and you say, look, you can't go past this point, hey, you should be good. And you should allow them to explore and grow in that. As your kids get older, those boundaries are going to grow. If we're not ready to let those boundaries grow, it'll be like a fish in a fish tank. You know how that works? That the fish can only grow as big as the fish tank they're in. If we're raising adults and not children, that means we got to widen the tank. Okay, we got to let it get bigger as they get bigger. The next one on this list is consistency fosters trust and assurance. So consistency in our leadership with kids fosters trust and assurance. Kids need to know that they're going to get the same thing from me day in and day out. I can't say to kids one day, and I'm really thinking about school right now, but I can't be in their face one day saying, hey, I'm here to help you, whatever you need. And the next day I'm like, leave me alone. I'm having a bad day today. Right? I can't do that. As a parent, I can't do that either. It can't be based on how I feel. It can't be based on the mood that I'm in. It has to be based on simply, I'm going to be the same person, this is called integrity, day in and day out. If my kid has that, that's going to help them be very secure in who they are. The first time I lose it for no good reason, I'm not talking about when you lose it maybe for a good reason, but for no good reason, you had a hard day at work, and now you're taking it out on your child, they will never forget that moment. And it will begin to dictate how they manage the relationship with you. They can begin to take more risk and even extend themselves because they know they are safe and in that safe environment with the same consistent leadership day in and day out. That's what you want for your children. That's why you want to be consistent all the time. Let's jump into number 5. We remove consequences. Okay, we remove consequences. And so there's a lot of things on this list, but for the sake of time, I'm going to say we remove consequences because it's easier, right? Your child is doing something wrong, and of course you should make an event out of it. If your child is 0 to 12, you should get the switch out, right, or the rod, and you should give them the 10 licks, right, so they know not to do this again. But you know what? I'm tired. I don't feel like dealing with the crying. The neighbors are walking the dog outside. So you know what? It's easier just to let it go. What do you want, a cookie? I'll give you a cookie, right? If we remove those consequences from our children, we don't let them grow at all.
So I'm just going to add to that last slide because I'm up here on this slide, but a couple of weeks ago we were in Hershey Park with the families here, and I had the perfect opportunity to let it slide. Hershey Park, the sweetest place on earth, wasn't so sweet for my son Silas that day for about a half hour. I gave him very clear directions on a water slide. I was at the top. He went down to the bottom and said, Silas, when you get to the bottom, wait right there. Very clear at the top, told him, got down to the bottom, went right down behind him. I got to the bottom, like, where'd he go? Totally disappeared. Now, you're in a water park, Hershey Park, it's a hot day, people everywhere, and so I'm like, where'd he go, where'd he go? I bumped into Kwame. Kwame's like, oh yeah, I saw him running off that way by himself. So Kwame saw him, different families saw him. Eventually I found him about 20 minutes later, waiting online with his tube with other families saying he's ready for the next water slide. I'm like, what happened? So I could have said, you know what, he's excited, it's Hershey Park, let it slide. No, I had to make an event out of it. I had to take the half hour out of the day, review with him what exactly took place, and then I said, what I didn't listen, Daddy, I didn't obey. He finally came clean, he finally said what he did wrong, so I had to be a little innovative. I took his water shoe, we went to a shower room, closed the curtain, told him to cry quietly, and I had to lay it down. It wasn't so sweet that time for him, Hershey Park being the sweetest place on earth, but So like Rob was saying, we can easily make excuses. I could have easily made excuses that day, but he wasn't listening so well that whole week. I was like, I should have addressed it earlier in the week, but then I seen the fruit of it that moment in time, and it scared the life out of myself, my wife. You know, literally, like, all the families are looking for him for a good 15, 20 minutes. Eventually found him tucked away, you know, but really don't let it slide, you know. Try to nip it early, try to get it early, and so situations like that don't arise, whether you're looking in a water park for your son, so.
Now, let me continue to add on that because, you know, how old is Silas?
He's 6.
He's 6, right? So Silas is 6, he wandered off. Now, what happens at 16 if he doesn't learn his lesson at 6, right? He's wandering much further than, you know, to the next ride. He's getting into serious trouble. And so if you don't nip it at a very young age, you will be one of those parents that are concerned, didn't we leave the car keys out, right? Like, what did we put them away? Because you're not going to trust your kid. Because in the beginning, when they were younger, you didn't give them what they needed to so they could be prepared for that future.
So the rest of the trip, Daddy, I'm going here, Daddy, I'm going there. So it was just, the rest of the trip was a lot more smoother. Anyway, so we're going to move on to mistake number 5. We remove consequences. Scientists are calling this the trophy generation or the trophy kids. Everyone wins. There are no strikeouts. We swing until we hit the ball. You know, I was sharing yesterday, I coached soccer for the past 2 years, my son's team. I saw this firsthand. There was one day we had a game, and the coach was like, why don't you distract your kids so my one kid who never scored the whole season can go score a goal, right? So I was like, it didn't seem right, but everyone had to score a goal. Everyone had to get a point. What else we have here? There are no losers. So this way it got a little tricky. So we're living in a time where we no longer keep score, and we're told in the league to not keep score. So as adults, we're not keeping score. But guess who's keeping score? The kids. And so they look at me, Coach, are we winning? I'm like, I look dumb. Like, you know, I don't know how to count. Like, they're looking at me like, what's wrong with you? You don't know how to count? Like, yeah, I was like, yes, we're winning because now I'm the adult. I'm looking dumb. I don't know how to count. They're counting. They're still counting. They're still measuring it up. But we as adults are being told that we can't keep score anymore, and everyone is on the same page, and everyone is winning. We are equal. Everyone gets the same award at the end. And I had a very strong temptation. There was this one player. I actually thought he was against the team. You know, he was on our team, but he was actually going against us at some times. I didn't want to give him a trophy. But I knew if I didn't do that, the last day, trophy day, I'd probably have a lawsuit right now. And I'd probably be being told I can't come back and coach, you know. But I was really tempted to give him not to give him a trophy. I was going through this material, and I was like, but I didn't do. I still gave him the trophy, but we're living in a time. If I would have done that, I probably got some big backlash if I had held that trophy back because he wasn't really participating, wasn't really doing anything for the team. But that's the consequences or the history and the research on this issue. And we get to the why try mentality. And so what this can breed or what this can foster, the consequences, they won't have ownership of their life. They'll learn to blame others. They become lazy. They'll have poor work ethic and creativity levels. They'll become dependent. They won't be self-sufficient. They'll be unready for autonomy. So remember, the dependent child of today will be the dependent adult in the future. And they'll be emotionally brittle. They will have few coping skills, and they won't develop resilience.
And so, you know, just so that this is framed correctly, you know, the reason why this is an issue is because your child will eventually grow up. The reason why all of these mistakes are an issue is because one day your child is going to grow up and they're going to face a world that's just going to flip it on them. Mm-hmm. You know, being in the education system, typically I'm telling kids, look, the real world is not like school, right? School, and some of you may not know, but in school, there's actually a policy that's like almost like no one can fail. At the end of the semester and the grades come in, the principal looks at all the grades. I see people shaking their head. They look at all the grades and they're like, okay, this one, you need to fix that, you need to fix that, you need to fix that, you need to fix that. Now you would think like, man, you should call the police on that, right? Look, it's happening in every school everywhere. And that's why kids are feeling like, man, why even try? Like, I'll just pass in a little bit, or I'll turn it in a little bit later, and I'm going to pass, right? It's almost like a joke when I'm saying, look, if you don't do your work, you're not going to pass. They're like, yeah, Will. Like, I've been doing this for a long time. I know how it works. This is what's happening in our school system. And so the Bible here in Proverbs chapter 14, verse 16 and 18, for the most part says that we need to fear God and move away from evil. When we don't deal with consequences, we never develop what I grew up learning, the fear of God. Right? The fear of God was my parents, but the fear of God was like bad stuff happens when you do something dumb. Right? Like that's really it. Like I need to know that there are consequences out there. Kids need to know that if I do something dumb, it may not work out for me. They need to know that. That's what's going to hold them back from saying, okay, let me think this through, you know? It's also going to help them do some other things, but you want to make sure your kid understands that that decision you're going to make, not 5, 6, that's one decision. 16, 17, 18, when I go tell you to take the Long Island Railroad to go to your mentorship meeting, if I haven't built in you the fact of consequences, then you may decide, you know what? I'm not going to take the train to Hicksville. I'm actually going to get in the next train that's going up to Penn Station, and I'm going to have some fun. Now, that sounds crazy to us, but look, if you're not aware of the consequences, you say, hey, why not? Let me try it, right? Let me try it. Let me go and do this. And so let's look at some of the solutions to this idea of not giving consequences, right? The first thing we need to do for our children, no matter what their age is we need to let them struggle. And if they fail, we need to help them interpret that experience. So what that looks like is my kid goes to do something and they fail. They face a consequence. Now it's time for us to come back, sit down, and really debrief that situation, right? So like what happened? Right? Well, you know, I thought I could do this, that, or the third. Like, okay. And what did you learn from this? What will you do next time? Having that conversation helps them to take those consequences and helps them to learn from their mistakes. That's what we want from them to do. We want them to learn from their mistakes. It's a chance for them to try again in some situations as well. It also gives them an opportunity to know that there's an end in this world, and also an opportunity for them to reflect on themselves. How many times do your children take time to just sit back and say, could I have done something differently? Could I have done it differently? What would the outcome be? That's what you're looking for.
Okay, so tell them stories about your own struggles and failures. This is definitely something we do in the Tui household. We often share with our kids stories of flops, failures, and fumbles. You know, I share with my kids, Daddy failed college bio. You know, they're like, you? I'm like, yes, I failed college bio. I also share with them, I almost didn't marry your mommy. They're like, I almost fumbled that one up. You know, it's a beautiful woman, a great godly woman. I love her to death, but I fumbled that one up. We took a break in our courtship at one point, and I almost fumbled that one up. And they're like, you guys almost didn't get married. I'm like, no, and we wouldn't have you. So I let them know. I let them know that Daddy has messed up. Marie can share her stories too on this issue, but we definitely let them know that we mess up and we continue to mess up, even being in Christ. Letting them know that we are still human, really developing, cultivating that relationship with them at a younger age. And we are hoping they are thinking that if we made it, you know, if Daddy failed college bio and Mommy almost got flunked out of nursing school and Mommy and Daddy, they were seeing each other and they broke up at one point, but they got back together, you know, there's hope. You know, it develops hope in them and develops resilience that Mommy and Dad have gone through some issues, some trials, and they were able to come out on the other side.
All right, next point is we want to help them put their finger on what they really want to achieve, right? So this is important. And you can see that in all of these things, it requires a lot of communication. A lot of communication. You know, if your child is running here, there, and everywhere, and you don't get a chance to talk with them, there's going to be a lot of time missed, a lot of opportunity missed. One of the things we need to help them do is to just pinpoint what do they really want to achieve. Now, you know if you have a child that's going to change from year to year, it may change from month to month, it may change week to week, right? But the goal is, what we're trying to accomplish here is to set some goals. Goals are important, right? Maybe your child, I know in my household at some point is like, hey, I want to get the Wii U. Okay, that sounds good. How much does it cost? How much money do you have, right? And what are you going to do to save up the rest, right? Have no problem with that. Because I could easily go, as the kids would say, just go to that machine and, press the buttons and the money comes out, right? We could do that, but what are we teaching them? It's good for them to set a goal and to achieve that goal. And if they don't hit the goal, this has happened too, right? Your kid is trying to save money for something, and then you're in that place, and they're really hungry. They're like, man, I want to buy. And I'm like, well, go for it. But remember, this is going to set you back when it comes to buying that Wii U or the Switch or whatever it is. And so they need to really take their time, figure out what they want, and accomplish it, right? I have 3 children who are thinking about what colleges they want to attend. And so that's a big goal now, that they have to really sit back. Now, of course, as a parent, what do we want to do? I want to do all the research. I want to do all the cost calculating. I want to also tell them what major they should, focus on. But I really have to step back and let them make the goal, right? What do you want to do? This is what I'm constantly saying that to them, also saying it to myself. What do you want to do? What are you passionate about? What do you think you're going to want to do for the rest of your life? Set the goal, work hard at it, accomplish it. People who accomplish goals feel really good about themselves.
Next point there, establish rewards that require hard work and progress. Little side note here, we've been doing a thing called CrossFit. I'm going to kind of tie it into here. CrossFit is like a homeschooling track group for the LICOC. And so what I established this year in reading this book is they show up, it's a month in June, 4 Saturdays in June. They show up once a year, four Saturdays of the year, and they run. And so out of the blue this year, I kind of popped it on them when I started doing something called Catch the Coach. Catch the Coach is we're going to do it the first day. If you can catch us doing a mile run, you're going to win some money at the end. Now, I just started this year because I'm realizing they're just showing up 4 Saturdays of the year, and that's it. The whole rest of the year, they're not running, they're not practicing, they're not trying. So the purpose of my doing this is that really rewarding, as it says here, putting in effort, putting in year-round effort. And if I'm noticing them getting faster next year, I might let them catch the coach and win the money. But if they're just showing up and not really just showing up for those 4 days, but really having more of an effort approach and really not just showing up to do something, but making a year-round thing where they can stay healthy year-round. And when they come to CrossFit in June, they're really ready, they're really prepared, and they're putting the effort in throughout the year and being able to catch us. So it's just a little thing. It can play out differently in your household. This is one thing I was reflecting on as I was looking at this point here of not just showing up, but also putting the effort in throughout the process.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, a lot of times parents, when we take our kids out, like maybe we're running around the track with them or something, this is not a monetary reward, but our kids always want to beat us.
Yes, yeah, that too.
Now, look, I don't know about you, but I'm not letting my kid beat me, right? But that's a reward in the fact that they're going to really try hard because they know I'm giving it my all. So if you come close to beating me, man, I'm going to give you a pat on the back. But I could think about, we used to go to the track with the kids, and I would say, you guys start, and then I'm going to catch up behind you. And man, I'd be running my heart out because I'm like, there's no way I can let these kids beat me. But they would try really, really hard because that would be a reward to beat Dad. But I'm like, no, that's not going to happen.
And really quick, I'm definitely seeing some fruit. I'm seeing the kids saying I'm running more. So even we're out, it's 2 months now since June or a month and a half. They're running more. They're talking. I'm talking to them. They're saying I'm running more. So I'm definitely seeing some little fruit already. They're seeing more. They're training now for next year to catch the coach.
And so the next one here is discuss your ambitions and how you felt when they were accomplished, right? So this is you kind of tapping into your memory bank and your treasure trove to say, look, when I was your age, this is what I wanted to do. This is how I went about doing it. This is how I accomplished it. This is some of the setbacks that I faced. This is what I didn't give up on, right? Like they need to hear that stuff. Because, many people, they think, oh, okay, Dad's the vice president of the company. He was probably just born that way, right? Like that's how you just got there. No, there was a process. I went through school and this, and they need to hear all of that. Because if they don't, they're going to think like, oh, it could just happen like that for me. And it doesn't happen like that for anyone. They really need to know it takes a long time, and you have to pay your dues. Something that kids today don't really want to do. They don't want to pay their dues, but it's important for you to communicate how your ambitions came to fruition over time.
Am I up?
I think so. Communicate your love.
Oh yeah, so communicate your love and belief in them regardless of what happens. Love should not be rewarded by performance. I've seen this sometimes, once again, coaching. Unfortunately, I've seen this with one dad and one son. How many goals you scored today? How many goals you scored today? How many goals you scored today? And I could tell the child, there's a really the dysfunction there. Their relationship is based on performance. It's based on how well he did today in that soccer game. My love for my children, no matter what, we were sharing the other day that we're coming to, I think, Sunday worship, just sharing that basically, children, we want you to do the right thing, but even if you do the wrong thing, we're still going to love you. We're still going to love you no matter what you choose to do. We're not going to be happy and excited. We're not going to encourage you to rob a bank, right? We're still going to love you, though, if you decide to go down that road. We want you to do the right thing. We want to encourage you to do the right thing. But whatever they decide to do, we want to let them know that our love for them is unfailing, like God's love for us, and even for the righteous and the wicked. And this, develops a solid foundation for ambition for our children when they know they're loved unconditionally, no matter what they choose to do. I mean, obviously, my greatest desire for them, become a disciple. And after everything after that, I know God will bless, because that was the point of my life where, I just became a disciple, and after that, God just started throwing my life together, because it was, Anyway. You can go around.
The last one on this list is definitely one that's close to my heart, is stop making excuses. Typically, amongst young people, they always want to blame someone else for the problem, right? Why didn't you pass your class? Oh, I didn't pass my class because the professor didn't like me. I'm sure some of you have heard that before, right? What happened? How did you get in that fender bender? Well, the other car, X, Y, and Z. Look, if you're going to be an adult, to me, you need to own up, right? You have to be able to say, my bad, right? It was my mistake. I made that mistake. In fact, I think it's better for us, even as just people, Christians, it's better for me not to even look towards anyone else for the issue. I can only fix me. Yeah. So you know what? It's better for me to own that, figure out how I can help navigate the situation, and move forward. I think the better our kids know that, the better they are to navigate this world, because they're going to come across some crazy people, right? Some of those people may actually be their bosses, and they're not going to be able to say, well, like I've heard this also, why aren't you working anymore? Well, the boss said, is mean and nasty. I only came late 3 times, and they decided to fire me. I'm like, did you hear what you just said? Like, yeah, but he didn't have to fire me. I only was late 3 times. I'm like, there's a problem there, right? You need to own this. You were late. For what reason? God only knows, right? Own your stuff. In fact, in my household, I have older children. That's one thing that is almost like, what do you call it? Like the wrath of God, right? So in the house, if you don't own your stuff, right? Like, oh, what happened here? Why isn't the kitchen clean? Oh, well, I cleaned it, but then he came in or she came in. Look, whose responsibility is it? I don't want to hear that it was somebody else. You need to hold down what your responsibility is, right? And then, of course, sometimes I say, look, in the future, you might have kids of your own. You might have a household of your own. What are you going to do? You can't blame anybody. You have to own this yourself. The responsibility is yours. It's very important that we get our children to stop making excuses. So this next piece is a different way of looking at how to help our kids in this area. We call it the fewer rules, more equations lifestyle. Gerard's going to start off with that.
So sure, so fewer rules, more equations. In our household, it didn't always come out like this, but I started making the rhymes up as I was looking over these notes. It says, basically we have a rule in our house, work and then play. So what I added today was work and then play will lead to a great day. A lot of times our children, when they get up and they just want to play, but get your work done and then you can play and then it will lead to a great day. Listen and obey, right? That's pretty much an equation. Listen and obey and you'll also have a great day. And if you don't want to be told what to do, just do what you know you should do. So we have simple equations like that in our household that pretty much guide and direct the household. Listen and obey the first time, listen and obey, and pretty much it will lead to a great day for our children.
We don't want to set so many rules and so many burdens on our children that they get stressed out because of all the rules. And we know that the rules from the Old Testament, didn't really work too well. When Jesus came, he kind of gave more of an equation: love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. He gave more equations for us to follow. He did give some rules, definitely to avoid some things, but he gave more equations for us to follow and for us to implement in our lives.
And so, along with these fewer rules and more equations, we need to talk with our children. Talk to them about the options they can choose. So it's very important. Remember last night we talked about critical thinking. It's very important that we kind of help them see what their options are. You have some choices out there. And what choices do you think you want to take? And what do you think the possible outcomes are for those choices? That's going to help develop that critical thinking, because you really want to help them be thinking in a way that even when you're not there, they're able to think these things through, right? And choose the right option. Then once they've made their choice and they've gone through it and they come back to you, you want to debrief those actions, right? You want to make sure that you sit down and have a conversation about the option that was chosen and the outcome that was achieved. Is it what they were looking for? Was it the best thing? Did it please God? You want to have that conversation and really help them think through the process without you saying, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that, right? That would be easy, but typically that's not going to bring about the change that you're looking for. It's not going to develop the growth and the maturity that you would need to raise an adult. I have this quote here that says, short-term benefits often bring long-term consequences. Short-term consequences often bring long-term benefits. All right? Wrap your head around that for a second. Short-term benefits often bring long-term consequences, right? So I'm having fun right now. I'm doing something pleasurable right now. But how does it affect you in the long term? Typically, negatively. Short-term consequences. I talked about those 10 spanks, 10 whacks. Yes, it's going to hurt my child for a little bit, but it's going to bring about long-term benefits, right? This is not something I want to be doing every day, every month, every year. At some point, it's going to end, right? I'm doing it well, it's going to end, and it's going to actually inform my child way into the future. Don't mess with daddy, right? Don't mess with mommy. Some of those things that our parents and grandparents taught us, they still hold true, right? Like people need that, despite what the world is telling us today. And so we want to make sure that we're helping our kids recognize these short-term consequences as a long-term benefit.
And to even go before that, 2,000 years ago, this was written, Rob just kind of shared through the author, but the scriptures obviously make things more clearer. It says 2 Corinthians 4:17, for this light momentary affliction is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory beyond all comparison.
And if I can just add that, these consequences are helping to prepare your child for their Christianity, right? This is not just for life, but they need to understand that Christianity is a long-haul lifestyle, and it's not going to be easy. There's going to be a lot of bumps along the way. And what we need to do is pick ourselves up and keep going.
Okay, mistake number 6. We lie about their potential and don't explore their true potential. We're insecure. Telling the truth requires a deep level of emotional security. Speaking the truth takes time and work. Lying is easier. Just kind of going to go off on a side tangent here and come back. My steps on some toes here. The whole Santa Claus thing, right? I'm going to bring this back into this point. But I was raised on Santa Claus. My wife wasn't. We talked it over as a family. Me and my wife, before we had children, we said, we're not going to do Santa Claus. Okay. So that was I dressed up as Santa Claus. They knew Daddy was Santa Claus. Daddy worked hard to get the gifts. I dressed up as Santa Claus. I give my children gifts. My coworkers, they kind of knew it too. We celebrated Christmas, so we didn't do the Santa Claus thing. True story, this year, I knew a coworker, her 8 or 9-year-old girl came up to her crying, saying, Mommy, is there Santa Claus? Now, this same mom is the same mom who gives a lot of affirmation. We talked about yesterday, a lot of affirmation. You're awesome, you're great, you're good, you're great, you're good, you're great. So she's mixing all these messages that you're awesome, you're great, when she's probably an average child, as most children are. And now she's saying to her mommy with tears in her eyes, is Santa Claus real? And she said, no. And so the mom came back to me and said, Gerard, what you're doing is right. You're being very truthful with your children. You're being very honest with your children. And that's from every level, not just Santa Claus. It's with, Tabitha, you smell, go wipe your armpits, go take a shower or something. We want to be truthful in every area with our children. And, once again, I know some do the Santa Claus thing here, but it played out very well with one of my coworkers. And, we're talking more about the gospel and Christianity and things of that nature. But we're living in a culture and a time where we're really telling our children to lie to them, to be honest with them. Lying is always easier. Facing the truth makes us responsible. Lies let us off the hook. I look like the oddball at my job. What do you mean you don't do Santa Claus? I look like the oddball, but now they're looking at me in a different light. My children come to my job and they see, it's something that God has just given. They see a very joyous family, which money cannot buy, and they're seeing the fruit of raising children based on truth and based on, developing that relationship with my children. And we lost sight of truth of ourselves. Many people, and in many ways, create their own truth.
And so I'm going to try to summarize this slide right here and just give some insight. 50 years ago, life was pretty static, right? You got a job, you stayed on that job for 30 years, you retired after 30 years, that job gave you a pension, you lived happily ever after in Levittown, something like that. Right? Nowadays, that doesn't happen. In fact, Gerard and I were talking earlier, when I was growing up, they would say, hey, get a state job. It's a good, secure job, right? That's not the case anymore. Pensions are out the window. There's nothing stable anymore. And so our children, one of the reasons we don't want to lie about their potential and we don't want to explore their true potential, we want to make sure that they are flexible and fluid in this world because they're going to have to move with the changes that are happening around them. No longer can you say, hey, I'm just going to be this static person who goes this way, and I'm not going to budge left or right. It's not going to work for you. You have to be prepared. You have to be adaptable. You have to be very flexible. Now, some of the younger people in this room who are in employment situations, no, you have to be flexible. You have to be prepared to switch your resume up in a heartbeat so that it fits the job description so you can land that job. Our children need to be prepared for that. They can't think, oh, well, I'm not good enough, or I'm not prepared, or thinking that they're better, right? Oh, I graduated from Harvard, so, I'm definitely going to get this job. Well, no. Studies show, if you look, I think it was on LinkedIn today, that, hey, they're not hiring people with credentials anymore. They want to know what you've done, right, and what you're doing. And so getting that 4-year degree, getting that master's degree doesn't equal money in your pocket. And so it's very important that we help our children to navigate these things by telling them exactly what they need to hear when they need to hear it, right? If they're not good enough, they need to know that they need to work harder, right? They need to be better. We can't sugarcoat it and say that D, right? It's great. We love these grades. You'll be fine. You will not be fine, right? You will not be fine at all. Some of the consequences here: depression, anxiety, unrealistic or unmet expectations, wandering instead of working. How many 30-year-olds do you know who should be in a job somewhere are either stuck at home behind a video game or they just spend their time wandering, doing something that's meaningless and not amounting to anything, right? Typically, that's a person who didn't get the right guidance as a young person. They're wishing they were someone else. Wishing they were someone else. That could be someone on TV, like, hey, I wish I was LeBron James. Hopefully nobody wishes that. Or it could be wishing that you were somebody, a friend who's doing well. We have Facebook, we have Snapchat, we have Instagram. It's very easy, especially for our children, to wish they were someone else, especially when what they're seeing is all the good stuff. Man, I want to be like that person, right? Galatians 6:4 actually says that a man needs to be proud about the work that he does with his own hands, right? It's not about me hyping you up and pumping you up. No, you need to say, hey, look at what I've done, right? This is what the Bible says. I need to be able to say, look at what I've done with my own hands and be proud of that work, That's what needs to happen in order for people to feel good about themselves. Recently, I just shared with a brother a younger brother, he's a Christian. I said, listen, bro, what evidence do you have of your Christianity? I know you're a Christian in name. I know you're living on your parents' glory, so to speak, on their faith and on their coattails, but what evidence do you have of your own Christianity? And he was like, you're right, I have none. And I was like, you need to fix that, right? You cannot live through this life thinking about what mom and dad have done or what I could do or who I think I am. No, I need to be able to say, look at, like James says, right? You tell me you have faith, well, I'll show you my faith by what I do. That's what we need to instill in our children.
Solutions, help them know themselves. So Rob just hit upon this, and this is one of the notes here. It says, nothing is more pitiful than adults still trying to figure out who they are. I was just talking to one of the younger coworkers the other day, and she has a baby girl. She's like 22, 23 years old. She's saying, yeah, I'm thinking about going back to college to do I don't know what. I'm like, you are a mom now. You have life. You have a responsibility to take care of, to start nurturing and raising. She just wants to go wander off to college, not know what she wants to study, not know what she wants to do. And now she's 23, about that age. Back in the 60s and 70s, if you had that child, that was your primary responsibility. Not saying you couldn't work, but she wants to go wander into college and go find out who she is. Meanwhile, she is now a mother of a child. We must expose our kids to environments where they can experiment with who they are from the inside out. Really quickly, I see Becky coming up, so we're getting the warning. All right, so we'll probably wrap up at this point. But Home Depot, one of my children's very hands-on. Parents, Home Depot has free Saturday workshops. If your children's very hands-on, I don't know what to do with Priscilla. She loves building things. I'm not a builder. So I brought her there. It's a good hands-on experience for her. There's a lot of things we can expose our kids to find out who they are. My kids went to Apple Camp this morning. Once again, it was free, Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week. So there's different things that are out there where our kids can start developing, start being exposed to different things and find out who they are and what they want to do with their life that are they're very cheap. What do they enjoy doing? What do they feel comfortable with? And why do they flourish, and what makes their best contributions? And we have a quote here saying, our worst sins arise out of our innate fear that we are nobody.
All right. Second one is help them develop their gifts. I think that's very self-explanatory, but you should make sure do you know you're a child, right? Do you know what gifts, God-given gifts they've been given, and are you helping to develop those things, right? Everyone has a core gift that kind of helps all the other gifts in their life grow. So you need to find out what that is and help your child become one with it.
So help them value people. Kids must realize that people aren't a means to an end, they are the end. One thing we find very effective, I know Dave's also doing this too, bring our kids to nursing homes, having them see that even though, how can I say, they're not the most influential people now, they're later on in life, it's good for them to be exposed, going to hospitals, hospital visits, things of that nature. Like kids need to see that people, we just don't step on them, we just don't, do things of that nature, but they are our means to the end. We really need to value people. Prioritizing people over projects and possessions, a true sign of maturity. That's to be definitely seen from the mother and father that above all things, our family is number one and everything else comes second. We must help them see the importance of serving people over popularity and pleasure. That's clearly seen when we do the We Care or the evangelism campaigns. I mentioned that a couple of Devos ago. It's hot, it's sweaty, but we're still out there. Our kids are seeing through actions that we still see the importance of serving the community, reaching out to the community, and letting them see that souls are the most important thing that we can do, and reaching out to people no matter what it is outside. And it's only in developing others that we truly succeed. So really, my primary focus right now, I love the church, but my primary focus is my 3 children, my wife and my 3 children. I want to develop them and have them shoot out, and I'm here definitely to serve the church. But right now, my primary ministry biblically is my 3 children and my wife. I'm definitely here to serve you guys, but that's my primary ministry according to God.
So the next point here is to help them find their passion, right? So one of the things you want to do is help them find their passion, and you want to help them fan their passion into a productive flame, okay? So whatever they're passionate about, what we do here is we try to help them find their way and how they're going to use that passion to serve the Lord, right? Everybody has a gift. Everyone has a talent. Everyone's excited about something. Now, how do you use that to bring glory to God? That's your job as a parent. You want to guide them along that way. Whoops. Then the next one is you want to help them learn perseverance. Kids often start something and then they don't want to finish. You want to help them find their way to the finish line, even if it hurts, right? Even if they decide after the fact that, hey, I don't ever want to do that again, don't let them give up, right? Because no one likes somebody who gives up or a quitter. So help them be very persevering. Help them throw off the disease of their mind called excuse-itis. Help them to stick it through. And then the next one.
Help them pursue excellence. You know, we sing a song, good, better, and best, right? May I never rest. That's a Tui song. Until my good is better and better is best, right? We want them to pursue excellence. We want them to not just be satisfied with where they are, but to really to grow and to grow and to grow. I mean, there's some more points here, but I think, you know, we want to cut it.
We want to give you guys an opportunity to turn and talk before we break. So we're going to do that now. We're going to turn and talk. Look for places where you had connections, places where you got an ouch, a shout out, or if you have any questions, we'll address those shortly. But well, let's turn and talk now. We'll do 7 minutes. We're falling behind, Gerard.
Yeah.
I don't know what we're going to do. We'll have to just give overviews.
Doing a lot of mistakes. My job
Oh yeah, you shared in class.
So when they were little, so I would say, okay, it's more. Wait 1 hour.
Fact check.
I have that artificial. Is that good?
Right now, but it's still.
Well, right now the fuerte is that. That's something he doesn't obey. For example, once I only allowed one hand. That didn't happen. It happened once. That's how we did it.
Yeah, right now everybody is negotiating. Like, he's at that stage where like, I want it now. He's learning to wait. He's learning to wait. So you know, it's like, we're standing at 8:30.
Now that they're teenagers.
30 more seconds, and then I'll be looking to lift some thoughts from you. I like the mic. Yeah, I'm going to take it over. Gracias. All right, so why don't we finish our last thought? And so, before I send you off to get refreshed with some snack, is there anyone who would like to share their thoughts from today? Thoughts? Ooh. Oh, Danny.
One of the is this on? Oh, one of the things I was sharing with my group is allowing kids to fail or allowing them to fall, like we learn, literally even. One of the things, my daughter has a bike, and her mom is always reminding her to put her knee pads on, and it's just a nuisance to her. She doesn't want to do it. It's like time consuming. The bike is here, the knee pads are somewhere she doesn't know. So she doesn't want to do it. And, just allowing her to fall is like a good thing because she fell, she scraped her knee. Now she doesn't touch that bike until Mommy, where's my knee pads? So now she's the one saying, where's the knee pads? And it took her falling and scraping her knee to, learn that. So, and she's only 5. So that's a good thing to let them physically fall sometimes so that they know the precautions we need.
Great example. Great example. Anyone else? All right, so I'm going to send you guys off to.
I shared in my group, right? That bringing up a child, teaching them the right thing. If they want to work towards something, they want this thing, they have to work. They have to show that they need it before they can get it. Even if they can work towards it, they can get it.
Yeah, you got to work for it. Work for it, work for it, work for it. Anyone else before we close out?
Lottie wanted me to share something, so you blame him if you don't like it.
No excuses.
Thank you. Good one, Dan. Good comeback. So one of the things I taught my kids when they were little, first of all, this is part of one of the mantras. I reduced parenting to this sentence. So to help guide me as I parented my kids, as I have been parenting. Parenting is about artificially amplifying the consequences of the choices your children make to prepare them for the future. So one of the ways I amplified the consequences artificially for my kids when they were little in teaching them delayed gratification is they loved marshmallows. So I would, when they would come for marshmallow time, I would say, okay, here's your marshmallow, but if you wait 1 hour, at the end of that hour, I'll give you 2 instead of 1. So at the beginning, they didn't hear that part. They just heard marshmallow. Here they come and they took it. But after a while, it kind of caught on and says, oh, Josiah, right? And he's like, I'm going to wait 1 hour because I want 2 marshmallows instead of 1. So he waited 1 hour. He got his 2 marshmallows, and Enoch was like, where's my second marshmallow? Hey, sorry, you took yours already. You didn't wait. So after a while, they were like, okay, it's better to wait. If I wait, I may get more. So that's a simple thing.
Absolutely. Go get your marshmallows. All right, we're gonna end with Walter Guerra Sr.
Appreciate that. Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback off what Danny said. I think one thing, besides letting them fall, just interpreting the experience with them. I think for myself, naturally, I can see myself as being that protective, overbearing parent. So just letting them fall when they have struggles and going through things and just trying to, be there with Shelby for them and just interpret that experience for them and how it was either positive or negative and, just be there for them. I think that's, just something that I liked. That was a great takeaway from Shelby and I.
Awesome. Yeah, and as you help them interpret the experience, you want to help yourself and them see into the future and how that experience might grow into something that could be very destructive. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for day 2. Please refresh yourself. There's coffee, there's snacks. If you have children, please get your children. Also, if you have any belongings in this section, please move them to the left side or my left, your right, because children will be coming into these pews momentarily. Thank you. We'll see you back shortly.